So you want to be a farmer? Here's 7 reality checks. So although we only moved to this farm 6 months ago, I've been in the farming industry for many years, and I've also been self-employed for many years. So I want to dispel some of those myths and some of those rosy ideas about the industry so that you can come into farming with your eyes wide open. So first up, I hate to break it to you, but not every day is rosy. Do I love farming? Yes. Do I love being at the farm? Yes. Do I still find it hard to get out of bed and actually find some motivation? Yes. I do try and show the ups and downs on this channel of every day, so you can see that it's not always wonderful. You know, there are days when there is blue sky and the birds are singing in the hedges, everything is going right and it feels wonderful. But there are also days when you come up and you feel like poo, or the sky is grey and dreary and you just can't think of anything to do, or you come up and you want to quickly get on with stuff, but all of the animals have got other ideas and have got tangled or they've got out, and all your to-dos for that day go completely out the window because of something else. You know, I've kept sheep for many years for other people, and this is the first time I've kept my own sheep, and I've never had problem with electric netting. But my sheep hate the stuff. And so I have spent vast amounts of time with different fencing and different netting and different polywire trying to keep these sheep in. So that's one of the things that you might think, yes, for example, for me, I'm going to go and mob graze. It's going to be great. It's going to be easy. It hasn't been, because these sheep have been a nightmare. So it's easy to think, especially if you're watching on YouTube, oh, doesn't that farming, that homesteading life look so fun? It is fun. But it's also hard, and not every day is great. So just be aware that, like every other job in life, there will be ups and there will be downs. So the second reality check is weather. So if you're somewhere like Britain, which has a temperate climate, there's going to be changes in weather. Today it's quite nice, it's 5 degrees-ish, we haven't got a blue sky, but there's no rain and it's fine. And to be honest, most days aren't too bad, but you will have to deal with the highs and the lows of weather regardless. While everybody else might be sitting at home on the Saturday on the sofa, or they're working in their nice air-conned offices, you will be outside moving dung or wrangling sheep or on your hands and knees weeding, regardless of what's actually happening with the weather. Now, I might be a little bit of a sadist, because actually I don't mind the awful weather. On the cold side of the spectrum, I should say. There's something invigorating to me about being up here when there is a blizzard or a thunderstorm and you have to get a job done regardless, because you can go home, you can have a warm shower, and it's a tale to tell. So that part of me, I don't mind. Heat, however, I find unbearable. Last year, when I was still working, we were shearing, and we had some of the highest temperatures of the season. I think it got up to 31, 32 degrees. It was horrendous. But you've still got to do your animal stuff, in fact more so, because you've got to check waters and you've got to make sure your animals are comfortable. It doesn't matter about you, whether you're comfortable, you've got to make sure your animals and your crops are comfortable. Then you can go and sort yourself out. So what I'm saying is, it's lovely to think, yes, I'll be frolicking around in the fields when it's 25 degrees and I'm in t-shirt and flip-flops, and it's lovely. But also, you have to deal with minus 10 degrees and wind chill, or 31 degrees when you can't cool down. So the third reality check is actually quite serious, and it's something you need to be prepared for, and that is that farming is actually emotionally and physically quite exhausting. And what do I mean by that? Well, physically, it's pretty obvious. You're doing a lot of physical, manual moving around, whether that's building, mucking out, on your hands and knees weeding. And actually, I find it a fantastic way to live, because when you get to bed, you are physically tired. You're sleeping like a log, and then you're getting up and you're doing it all the next day, and actually you become very physically fit by farming. But the thing that I hadn't really thought about before I started was the mentally exhausting aspect of it. So I have worked in many jobs over the past 20 or so years in a bid to find my passion, which ended up being right where I began, farming. And it's allowed me to see lots of different things. So when you work in retail, for example, as I did, or when you work in the office, the stress really is customer complaints, trying to get your admin done for the day. Maybe the commute holds you up and you're late to work. You know, that's kind of a lot of the extent of the mental fatigue. When you're farming, it never stops. And that's regardless of whether you're farming on a big scale like I am, on 40 acres, or whether you've just got a little backyard farm where you maybe just keep chickens and some quail. And when I say emotionally exhausting, I mean it's the difference between your boss shouting at you, which I'm not trying to negate, it can be awful, or bullying in the workplace or something can be horrendous. But on the farm, it can be life and death situations. So for example, when I came up in mid-September and overnight one of my sheep had tangled herself in the electric netting and had died. She was dead. And not only did I have to deal with the heartbreak and the disappointment of her dying, I then had to sort out getting rid of her. Because in the UK, you can't just go and bury her. You've got to call somebody and pay them to come and pick her up and take her away and sort the paperwork out. So all of that is quite emotionally draining. And it can be the same whether you've got sheep or you've got quail. Say suddenly in the middle of winter, your backyard chicken flock get a respiratory illness. You can't just clock off from that. You will treat them, you'll have to take them to the vets, you'll probably be inside at night, laying in bed thinking, are they going to be okay? Are they going to be alive in the morning? Is it going to get worse? Is it going to have improved? It can be a real struggle. Even now, if it's windy, I lie at home in bed thinking, oh, should I go to the farm and just check everything's okay? The sheep, again, have been a nightmare in getting out. That causes me a lot of stress because what happens if they get onto a road? What happens if they get into my neighbour's garden? What happens if they go across into another farm? It's mentally quite draining. Now, I'm not trying to put you off because it is fantastic. The arrival of babies, for example, when your chicken lays its first ever egg, when you get a brand new run set up and you're looking at your quail as they sort of muck around and find insects and stuff. It's absolutely beautiful and totally fulfilling. And there's the mentally exhaustion on one side and then there's the mental fulfillment on the other side. But coming into it, just be prepared that it will take a toll. You will need ice cream, you may need wine or gin, and you'll need some supportive ears to listen to you ranting as well. It is excellently and very fulfilling, but just be prepared for that mentally draining aspect. Just a quick heads up to say thank you so much for watching. If you're enjoying it, please hit the thumbs up button and consider subscribing and watch all the way through to the end so you get all those 7 reality checks. And after you're done, feel free to watch some of the other videos from Brimwood Farm. So the 4th reality check is income, and more importantly, the fact that it completely changes. Now, I'm quite lucky in this because I've been self-employed for many years. So I'm not actually used, my working life, I've not been used to having a paycheck. My other half, however, has found it really difficult to move from a monthly paycheck to money as and when you make it. Now, of course, it slightly depends on your business model. For example, if you're doing a market garden, then it will depend on whether you're doing a CSA and you're doing farmers markets. And in that case, you may get a big chunk of money at the beginning of the season for the CSA, or you might get that weekly income from the farmers market. However, if you're doing livestock, it's completely different because ultimately most of the year you're not earning anything until those young animals that you've bred, either for the meat market or for breeding animals, go off to sale. So what I'm saying essentially is you've got to get to grips with your finances and saving, because you can no longer spend all the money when you get it because that pot of money may be needed to last you several months, up to 6 months perhaps. Whereas if you're on a paycheck, obviously, you know that next month you're getting another paycheck. So you could spend all of your paycheck because it's coming again. Let's take sheep, for example, because we've been using them a lot. For sheep, if I was doing a lot of sheep for the meat market, I would only actually make my money when my lambs go off to sale or my breeding rams go off to sale. And that means for the majority of the year, for when they're getting bred, for overwintering and feeding, for the lambing season when you're vaccinating and worming and things like that, all the way through to the summer, maybe August time, you're not making any money at all. And actually, you've got no control over the sheep market either. So you might have done really well one year in terms of your lamb prices, and then you start to count on that and think, yeah, that's fine, I'll be making such and such an amount of money. And then it crashes and you get round and you don't make half what you made the year before. So it's really hard. So you have to get into that mindset of saving and planning and having several income streams coming in, because you can't rely on that paycheck anymore. So the fifth reality check is something that we as humans hate to do. It's fail. There is something in us that makes failure just not an option. It's hard to admit it to ourselves. It's definitely hard to admit to others when we fail. But the problem with that is you don't grow and you don't learn. And this is the same for every walk of life. But in farming, you are going to fail. Even the most confident and professional and experienced of farmers will fail at something at some point. Ultimately, when it comes to farming, we, as the stewards and caretakers of our land, have very little control of what goes on. We can't control Mother Nature. She will do what she wants. So you might have planned out your entire market farm crops, and then you go to plant them and it all looks wonderful. And then overnight, a herd of deer comes along and eats everything. Or you have the most glorious beets and you just can't wait to pull them up, and then you pull them up and they're filled with maggots. You can't control that. You can help reduce the likelihood of it happening. For deer, you can put up fencing. For maggots, you can put over insect nets. But you can't stop it completely. But the most important thing is to say, yeah, okay, I mucked up, I failed, but the next year I'll do something different. I'll add those insect nets. I'll put up some electric fencing. So just know that you will fail. And I have failed loads. As I keep coming back to the sheep, but yes, did I fail with the netting? Yes, I had a ewe lamb die. Have I still had issues with fencing? Yes. Has the mob grazing been all I expected it to be? No, because they keep getting out. But it just makes you grow and find better ways of doing things. So be aware that you'll fail, accept it, because that's going to happen, and then just take each failure as a time to grow. You're not necessarily going to grow overnight. Again, you may go back to that ice cream and that gin. But you know, a day later, a few weeks later, you'll accept what's happened and you'll move on. Number 6 is that it is ridiculously expensive to start. So though farming is extremely different from keeping pets or growing and gardening as a hobby, I highly recommend doing those things to start with. You can keep some chickens in your garden, some quail. You can grow some crops at home just so that you start to realise, do I want to do this? And you need to know that because it's going to take a lot of investment. We are extremely lucky in that this is my inherited family farmland, so we didn't have to purchase the property. We've still sunk probably at this stage over £15,000 into it in the first 6 months. And I don't even know where all of that money has gone. Some of it has been buying animals, some of it has been buying infrastructure, but there's other things like just applying to the water board to get water pipes up here. That's a cost. Having perimeter fencing put in, that's a cost. Buying hurdles and sheds, seeds for your market garden and plants. I've already spent over £600 on market garden seeds. And this is my first ever year doing a market garden. I don't even know what I'm doing. And I've already spent £600 on it. So it's really worthwhile getting some experience first before you dive in. Unless you're incredibly rich, of course, or you inherit a fortune, or you win the lottery. In that case, just go for it. Do it. But if you're worried about money and start small. Get some experience. Maybe before you buy a farm, try and find some land that you can rent nearby. There's lots of farmers that have random bits of land on their farm that they just wouldn't mind somebody keeping some sheep on, so you can get some experience and you can start to get into the business that way. Just realise that it's going to be way more expensive than you think. This has already cost us way more than we thought it would, and we haven't really even got going yet. So just be aware. I don't want to put you off. Please don't be put off, because we need all the farmers that we can at the moment, working on small scale, regenerative, self-sustaining farms. We need you, but just realise it's not going to be a walk in the park, and it's not going to be cheap. And the 7th reality check, and this is probably the most important one of all of them in terms of fulfilling your dreams and getting out what you're about to put into farming, is that farming is not a get-rich-quick scheme, it's a way of life. If you want to make a lot of money and you want to make it fast, do not come to farming. You will always be chasing cash, you will always be worrying about all the pitfalls and the things you failed at, and you will never find the enjoyment that farming brings. Farming, living off the land, growing food, keeping animals, is, in my personal opinion, bloody fantastic. It's a fantastic way of life. Whether you're doing it for yourself or you've got a family, you're bringing up kids, it's a great way to show people how you nurture and cater towards the land and you live within your means. And all of that will be missed if you just want to come and make money from it. I'm not saying you cannot make money. You can. There are lots of very successful farmers, and not in those sort of older traditional style vast estates of thousands and thousands of acres. There are people today doing regenerative agriculture, doing market farm gardens, doing rare breed animals that make a lot of money because they do it very well. But most of those people are not doing it for the money. They're doing it with their heart. They're doing it because they want to conserve a rare breed or a heritage breed. They're doing it because they want to grow food for their local community and show that actually you can eat really well, fairly cheaply, sustainably and locally. I will say that for the modern farm, you need multiple income streams. You can't rely really anymore on just doing one thing because it might not work. But if you're coming to farming just for the lifestyle, you will quickly find that you can strip away lots of those mod cons that you think you need. We've moved to just down the road here. We don't have a TV anymore. We don't watch TV anymore because we don't actually need it. We have the internet. We don't need the TV anymore. So that's one of our huge bills gone. You realise that actually you can live a lot less. And it's a lifestyle choice, and the more you put into this lifestyle choice, the more you will get out, not only financially, but also mentally and within your soul. So there you have it, the 7 reality checks of farming. It's not to put you off. Farming is fantastic. I utterly love it. It's not without its challenges, but that's part of loving it as well. If you want to be challenged, you want to learn, you want to grow, do farming. It's fantastic. It's a great way of life. And yes, it can be cold and dreary and soul-sapping. But on those days where you help new life into the world, or you just decide, today I'm going to take a break and I'm going to go to my farm and it's blue sky and the meadow grass has come up and I'm going to have a picnic and just sit and watch ladybirds and birds flying around in the trees and bees. There's nothing quite like it. So don't be put off. Just keep those 7 reality checks in your mind just so that you know what you're getting into. I'm going to go back and check on these blimmin' sheep, because they have been one of my reality checks, and the more I keep them, the more I realise this is possibly why they are a heritage rare breed, because they're a nightmare at getting out.